Start a small business. No need to work 40, 50 hours a week, slaving your life away. Obtain financial freedom, be your own boss, and create your own destiny. Moguls are the new superstars. The path to country club membership and a leased Mercedes-Benz is paved in gold as you take your business trips to Orlando or Vegas. Validation from your in-laws is just an LLC and Facebook business page away. At least, that's what they tell you anyways. Through social media, websites, and targeted ads, you're sold an image. Small business owners seem to walk on water. You'd think you're the last person on earth working a regular job with a regular boss. But there's trouble in paradise, and its name is in over your head. People start looking to start their own business, don't know what they don't know. But that's why we started our Small Business Confidential podcast, to share what we've learned from years of experience. There's not a lot of people in on this, so remember, dear podcast listeners, you heard it here first, off the record, on the QT, and very hush-hush.
Hi, everybody. This is Mike Riley, and I got my two top guys with me, Brooke and Amari. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. Friday. We survived for now.
Yep.
We survived another week, right, Amari?
Bright and bushy-tailed, ready to go.
That's right. Hey, sometimes success, folks, is just living to the end of the week and surviving, meeting payroll, got your bills paid, maybe a little in the bank. You know, let's not make it sexy here. Corporate jet can wait, right? Although I can tell you one thing, if I won the lottery, nobody would know. All you'd see is that corporate jet, right? Oh, gee, my rich uncle left me something. So, well, listen, we want to talk. We've had an interesting week because, and it was capped by a great article I suggest everybody read. It's in the Atlantic Monthly. You can go online and read it. It's written by David Brooks. And I forgot the title, but the title is something about how the elite universities ruined America. Is that what it was, Brooke?
Yeah, just the evolution of the Ivy League system.
Yeah. And it talks about hiring, managing, how you learn, how you don't learn. I don't want to get into necessarily the weeds on this in-depth story, but it is, if you've got your own business, you're getting into real estate, you're dealing with all the conventional wisdom out there, the traps, et cetera, this is really a worthwhile article to read. But we've been dealing with managing subs, managing foremen, longtime foremen, and I want to share with all of you, what we have learned. So, Brooke, why don't you lead us off? What's been your takeaways this week on the art of managing?
Well, I think it all kind of comes back to just keeping it simple in your managing style, getting back to the basics. I know just getting down to the specifics, pre-COVID, we had a pretty successful process, how we're tracking our payroll, our extra work, material subs, all the stuff that goes into, managing a job from like a finance standpoint. But when COVID happened, we had to adapt, which I think it was a good thing. We instituted some new processes where now everything's on an online system, spreadsheets. We have our VAs who update them for the foreman. But I think what we've realized is we might need to go back to...
Hey, Brooke, sorry. Tell the people what the VAs are.
The VAs are virtual assistants in the Philippines. We have 3 ladies who each one kind of works in a specific sector in our company. We have one who works pretty close with me and our other controller from an accounting standpoint. We have one who works a lot with Amari, on returning customer emails and calls and helping scheduling work. And then our other VA works with Lindsay on the property side of things. So each of them assist us in doing certain aspects. But, when COVID happened, we had to adapt like all businesses, adapt or die. And I came up with a system where we're entering all of our time, each employee's time for each job on a Google Sheet that gets sent to our VAs, and then they handle uploading it to our payroll system. But we've realized that we've noticed some issues within, our jobs where, extra work might not be getting tracked properly. Sometimes hours aren't correct. So I think what we've realized this past week is we need to go back to, not in full, go back to how it used to be. We're still going to use our online system, but we need to tweak our process to kind of streamline, some of these problems that we've encountered. And I think this past week, it reared its ugly head, especially on Monday night when we had that big meeting. So what I took away, and to make a long story short, what I took away from this past week is we've got some problems that are fixable. We've addressed what those problems are. I'm starting to come up with a plan. I'll review it with you two. And we need to we'll begin instituting that. We've already started instituting that this past week, but it'll kind of go into full effect next week.
Yeah, let me just kind of recap and summarize, and you correct me, Brooke, if I'm not summarizing it correctly. But folks, it all comes down to fail to plan, plan to fail. If you don't have a plan in place for whatever you're doing, and you're not measuring it and you're not tracking it, then you may end up in a dead end street. You may going from Cleveland to Chicago. You may end up in Columbus. And that's what happens both on the contracting side and on the property side, where you buy a piece of property, you're going to rent it out. You got the ROI all established. I want to make this amount of money, X, Y, and Z. Well, did you make it? Yes or no? And when did you go off course? And I think, let me tie this into this article in the Atlantic Monthly, because his indictment of elite American universities is that they're teaching people how to jump through hoops, not to necessarily think for themselves. Thinking for yourself is establishing what your goal is and what's your plan to meet that goal. Thinking for yourself is then looking at that plan throughout that process, throughout that journey, and asking yourself, is this working or not? Now, from the contracting side, what we discovered was the foremen were paying lip service to the work order. They weren't even tracking it. They were just, they'd gotten so used to doing these jobs that they just went to sleep. And then they woke up in Columbus and not in Chicago. Did I capture that the right way, Brooke?
Yeah, I think as from a big picture standpoint, that's the overall problem. I know one thing that at least I find really rewarding is kind of trying to solve or troubleshoot these problems from like a micro standpoint, like what things can we start to institute now? Because I think it's important it's important to have a goal. I know, Mike, you use that analogy a lot. You're driving from here to Chicago, but then within that goal, there's certain checkpoints that you need to hit. You need to make sure that you've got your gas, your tires are filled up. By hour 2, you'll be in Toledo. So relating that to what we're going through is, you have an overall problem. Okay, so now you got to get down to the nitty gritty of, what things can we do to prevent these problems from happening again. And I think it's important, not only from, a business standpoint, but, your personal life. If you've just bought a house, if the goal is to fix it up and rent it out and make a couple $1,000 a month on a profit. Okay, great. That's your goal. Now get down to the details. What are you going to do to reach that goal?
Right. And let's not make this into some just little magazine article. Let's kind of drill into that a little. When we talk about a plan, and you're absolutely right, Brooke, driving from Cleveland, I mean, we all live in Cleveland here, so let's go Cleveland to Chicago. You want to know, okay, well, in 1 hour, I should be at Sandusky. In 2 hours, I should be in Toledo. In 2.5 hours, I'm going to take a break because I'm in Indiana now. And 4 hours, I'm here. So you're always measuring where you are. Now, if you take it into a contracting job, you have a plan. Like we're painting the house. Let's just say we're painting the house. You're painting the front of the house. I've got 20 hours to do the front of the house. Okay. Well, I got me and a guy. At the end of the day, we should be done, right? We should be done with that house. Working a long day, 20 hours, we should be done. If we only got it halfway done, what does that tell you? It tells you may be off on that estimate, right? What happens if the guy you're working with is taking forever to just paint something? Well, you better lose that guy or he's just going to drag the other 3 sides down the tubes. What if the customer's coming out and being an idiot and standing over you? Make sure, you're doing X, Y, and Z, which is not in the scope of the work. So those signals are getting flashed to you in real time. And you need to adjust your plan. In some cases, it may be to walk. Let's say you're in real estate and you bought this house. Well, you better have a measuring stick at somewhere along the line of how much you're actually going to spend to get this ready to go. And what do you do when you see that all of a sudden this isn't working? Well, one of the buttons you may press is the eject button, which tells you to sell the house. Look, I got to cut my losses now. This is not working. But unless you have a goal and a plan that's you're measuring, you could get lost in a hurry. What's your thoughts, Amari?
Yeah. My thoughts would be that you need that goal, the plan, and the tracking as kind of like the foundational pillars of whatever you're trying to do. And, for the contracting side of what we do, that's the estimate, that's the work order, contract, the draws. We have these things in place. So kind of getting back to Brooks, initial point of getting back to the basics and, just adjusting with COVID. It's like, it's one thing to be flexible, as the market changes, as hiring changes, and these changes are just going to happen. That's just life. But you don't want it to get into a territory of chaos, where those foundational pillars are ignored or just made to be less enforced in certain times for no particular strategic reason. So when you have those pillars in place, the contract, work order, estimate, whatever those things are, the goal, plan, tracking of the plan, keep that pretty simple, just anticipating that something's going to come up that you didn't anticipate. And then you can deal with that and come up with ideas to be flexible for that. But we don't need to be flexible for, those main important pillars, of the business.
Yeah, we're talking about in this podcast the art of managing, and managing means managing yourself and also managing the job. And quite frankly, what I've seen in my 71 years on this planet, and 50 years running a business, is I don't think people really appreciate how tricky it is to manage yourself and to manage a project. And I think a lot of times businesses fail, investors fail, in real estate, is because they're getting too big too quick. I mean, if I had $1 for every time I'm talking to some investor calling me, and they're talking about well, I'm going to buy this house and then I'm going to do this and I'm going to buy 5 other houses and I'm going to build. I said, wait a minute. I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. Let's just make sure you're making money on this one job. Okay. And do you have a plan of how you're going to make this money? And I think that's why a lot of times the best real estate investment that you do is to buy a duplex, live on the second floor, and rent out the first floor and just see how it goes and get some real-time experience before you buy another house that you're not living in. So it's almost like, the astronauts going to the moon. They didn't go to the moon in 1962. They first circled the Earth 3 times and then landed in the ocean. And then they did Gemini, where they did a spacewalk, and then they did practice their docking. And then, 8 years later, they're going to the moon. But if you want to get into real estate, you live in California, and you've never done this before, and you're buying a property in Cleveland, why don't you just take the money and flush it down the toilet? Because that's what's going to happen. So, and then you have to manage subs. You got to find subs. You got to manage subs. You got to manage the money that's going out. You got to manage the loan. Okay, how's this going to work? So managing is something you have to learn. And 2, it's how you learn. Your thoughts, Brooke?
Hey, let's stop here. We got to pay some bills. 30 seconds, and we'll be back.
If you enjoy listening to our Small Business Confidential podcast, we're sure you'll enjoy our first podcast, The Cleveland Real Estate Investor. We give outside investors an inside look into the real estate market in Cleveland. Cleveland has been on the rise, and investors from all over see those cheap prices and salivate. Our job is to educate those investors and steer them in the right direction with several years of experience of how to do it right and many examples of how to do it wrong. Find the Cleveland Real Estate Investor podcast on any app you listen to your podcast today.
Yeah, no, I mean, managing it can be applied to a lot of things. I think when you are getting into investing in a property, or hell, even if it's just your own personal home, you've got a lot of balls you got to juggle, but you better have a plan. If not, you're just flying blind, and I don't know. That always just fuels anxiety for me. If there is no plan. I used to live like that a while back. I don't anymore, and I prefer my life now.
A little more organized.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts, Amari?
Yeah, I agree. It's night and day. And then for me, it's like I look back and wonder how I even made it this far without those foundational pillars. And knowing that things happen, things come up. Sometimes you veer a little bit left, and maybe you add a couple minutes to your trip, just getting back to that analogy. But you get back on the road knowing that you have a real destination and aren't just driving for the sake of driving. So
Right. That's the first trap you make. Let me just hit on a few quickies real quick about the art of managing people working for you. Okay. If first of all, they're not your friend. You're going to treat them with respect. You're not going to use them, but you have to understand that they're not going to listen to you if they think you're an idiot, which means you have to know that plan inside and out. You have to be prepared. You have to work longer hours than your employees. You can't be working on your golf game when you're initially investing in real estate or, starting a business, right? You are making a commitment, and you've got to get your shit together and know that plan inside and out, so that when you do have that person working with you that you hired, you know exactly what they're supposed to do and how long it's going to take them. And you keep it simple. So if you're hiring a plumber, basically saying, hey, I need you to come in and fix this toilet and fix this vanity. Okay, how much? And then you're going to go check the work, because you assume, if you've never worked with them, they're incompetent. They're going to leave a mess. They're going to smoke in the house. What could go wrong? 9 times out of 10, it will go wrong if you don't know them. And that sends a message to them that you've got your shit together, that you want to make sure they're doing it right, they're cleaning up, and that's it. And now you've achieved 2 things. The first thing you've achieved, you fixed the problem. Second thing you've achieved, you found somebody who you can rely on going forward to do some of your repairs. But assuming incompetence when you're managing somebody is number 1. Number 2 is, just because you're all psyched up to make money on real estate doesn't mean the one you're hiring is. They may just say, hey, I'm looking for a job 9 to 5. I'm not looking to change the world or make $1 million. Just make sure I get paid. And I think when we're managing people, we've got to understand how they are hearing what we're telling them. Your comments, Brooke, on that?
Yeah, no, I think your first part is spot on. At the end of the day, this is a business. You obviously treat them with respect, but you need to be able to call them out when they're screwing up. If they're mouthing off, you better address that on the front end. If you don't, they're just going to use you, abuse it. I remember when I was a foreman, when I was in my early mid-20s, I had a number of really great guys who worked on my crew, and I had a bunch more who, saw me as this young kid. They could get away with certain stuff. And, I was young and naive, and, I wish I could go back in time and I would do things a different way. But I mean, hey, that's life. You take those experiences and, you try to avoid them, or at least learn from them and apply it to the next problem that comes up.
How about you, Amari?
Yeah, I think what you said is important about understanding how people are hearing this stuff. People that work for you are processing it, because I think what I've observed in my theory is, a lot of people can think about these things that we're telling them and hear it as if I'm telling people how to be a superstar or how to, overachieve. And it's trying to find that way to tell people you're not overachieving by doing the things that I'm telling you. That's the job. That is the job. You're not overachieving by giving me a heads up, showing up on time, sending, your stuff in when you're supposed to, or that is the job. That is the expectation that you're supposed to meet here. Like us, it's coming up with ideas. That's a part of it. Is finding more efficient ways to meet the goals that we need to meet, as a company. That is the job. It's not, some lofty, dreamy goal or anything like that. So that's been something I've been observing more so recently.
Yeah, and I think when you're going to hire somebody, and we'll end it here. When you're hiring somebody, you got to look for those intangibles. And one of the things this Atlantic Monthly article brought out is they did a study where it showed that if you hired people from Yale or Harvard versus Cleveland State, they actually used Cleveland State in this, some just under the radar, good university, that there wasn't any difference in how well the project was done between those two groups. They're all basically the same. Maybe a 1%. I think he said a 1% better, with the Yale, Harvard. But it was the negative thing was the people from Harvard and Yale were assholes to work with because they just thought they knew everything. And as opposed to the Cleveland State people, which were more, hey, they didn't have the ego. They didn't have the, I'm a big know-it-all, et cetera, et cetera. And they were all about getting the project done, being a lot more team-oriented. And that's who you want to look for if you're going to hire. I don't want to look for somebody who's, I'm just taking this because I'm taking this job because I can't find any other job. I can't hold a job, so I need to pay some bills. Well, why can't you hold a job? You're looking at the resume. Well, because you're an asshole. You don't show up for work.
If you know it all, then why are you sitting in front of me?
Yeah, why? Yeah, exactly. I remember, Amari, we were interviewing somebody once, and it was so comical. I think it's like 3, 4, 5 years ago when you first starting in our company. I said, am I working for you? Or are you working for me? It was pathetic. He was like, well, I need to be off on Friday. I got to do this. I got to do this. And I could only work. I said, wait a minute. Who's working for who here?
He's got this. Right? Doing us a favor.
Exactly. Look at these pictures. Look at this picture, this table I built. I'm thinking to myself, how long did it take you to build that table? 2 years? We got to get those tables knocked out in half a day.
Right.
Because we're professional. So I think that ego thing. And the other thing is from a team aspect, Brooke, they talked about glue players. These people that are like the left tackles on a football team. Or they're the 6th man, 7th man off the bench. They're just great presence in the locker room. And they're just adding to the vibe, the positive energy. They're problem solvers, as opposed to those people that you hire. And folks, if you're going to remember anything from this podcast about how to manage, is cut your losses. If the house is not working out, if you overpay, just cut your loss. Get out of it. If you've hired somebody and this guy is not showing up, he's late, he's sick, there's this problem, he comes in, he's complaining about his life, get rid of him. Right, Brooke?
Yeah, there's always signs on the front end. Just show up. If you can show up for like a week straight on time, that's always a good sign. But after a couple days, 20 minutes here, next week, it's, I forgot I got this appointment. Those are bad signs.
Yeah, and let's just tie a bow on all this with that, again, referring back to that Atlantic Monthly article. And if you're a parent of teenagers and you want these kids to get into a good college, do me a favor. Don't do it. Take a year off. Have them take a year off. Don't have them go to AP courses so they can get in good school. That's a trap. That's for suckers. Because at the end of the day, if they don't know, I don't care what school they go to, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, whatever. But if they don't know how to manage themselves, they don't know how to show up for work, they don't know how to sell and listen to people, sell themselves, sell their product. What is it all about? Just because they go to these universities doesn't mean they're going to be successful. If they don't know how to manage themselves, get a job in high school, working after school. You want to get a guitar? You want to get a motorbike? Okay, start saving for it. Right? Your thoughts, Amari?
Yeah, I think, just of everything we talked about, the conventional, ideal, simple ABC path, college and school in force is just not, it's just not reality. Having a plan, having a goal, tracking it, and being open to different ways on how to get there, tracking, is it working or not? you know, that is what, regardless of if we're talking about, you know, losing weight, your work, or just
your money, your
No.
fitness, your relationships.
everything. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And don't, parents out there, you get these teenagers, they get a bad grade. Don't blame the teacher. Please, don't blame the teacher. What are you setting this person up, your kid, for failure? Hey, you're the one that fucked up, right? You didn't study. You didn't listen. You were goofing off. You were doodling, whatever. But you're the one that got it. You're not interested in it. Maybe you're not good at it. You'd rather just, you like tinkering on cars, or you like fixing things. You're like sewing, whatever. You're a round peg. It's a square hole, right? But start building some awareness, because you're going to need that when you get out. Unless you're some trust fund, unless you're third generation money, where, you're just going to work a nonprofit. You don't need to make money to pay your bills. Money's there. So that's a whole different game. But if you're in the 95% of us out here who got to work to pay bills, you got to keep it real. And you got to start teaching these kids early on. Be proactive about owning your mistakes, learning, acquiring knowledge, getting up every day, going to a job, showing up. That work skill. Final thoughts, Brooke?
Yeah, I mean, just going off what you just said, building those small productive habits, I think, is also it's just so crucial, waking up, making your bed, taking a shower, getting some sunshine in your eyes, going to work. It's just you just stack these small wins every day. And, over time, there's a good chance, if you keep doing that, that you will be successful in some area of your life. And yeah, I mean, sometimes a successful day for me, I've got how old is he? He's like almost 5 months old, newborn. I mean, sometimes a successful day for me is just making it to the end of the day. I go to work, I get my stuff done, try to go for a run, take care of my son, be with my wife. It's just those small wins. So,
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's end on that note. We're going into the weekend. All right, everybody. We'll pick something up next week. All right, Amari. All right, Brooke. All right, everybody.
okay. Have a good weekend.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Small Business Confidential. To support, please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Also add our podcast to your favorite streaming services. Everything is appreciated, and we'll be back soon with another episode and upload schedule. The person voicing the intro's name is Travis Riley. Thank you, Travis. And the music was done by our engineer, me, Amari.